Catherine was a purchased bride. Like a soulless Barbie doll, she was fitted with a corset and taken to the church, where she completed a loveless wedding ceremony. She was curious about the man she was meeting for the first time, always sneaking glances at him. She had been looking forward to their wedding night, but her husband refused to share a bed with her. He coldly instructed her to stand in the corner, facing away from him, and undress without dignity while he indulged himself. This was a devastating blow to Catherine, but it was only the beginning. After marrying into the farmer's family, Catherine felt like a mere decoration. Every morning, her maid would enter the room, open the windows, help her get up, comb her hair, put on a hoop skirt, and fasten a corset. Then, she would walk down the long staircase and sit on the sofa in the living room, staring blankly. She had to sit up straight, remain silent, stay awake, and was not allowed to leave the house without permission. Her life was filled with suppression and boredom, like millions of ants gnawing at her free-spirited soul. The light in Catherine's eyes gradually dimmed. However, her father-in-law's demands were even more stringent. He required her to prioritize her husband in everything. One evening, when a group of guests visited and dinner stretched on for hours, Catherine, unable to join in the conversation, quietly left the table to retire to her room. After receiving a nod of permission from her husband, she started towards her room, only to be stopped by her father-in-law.
You will wait up for your husband.
I am perhaps a little overtired this evening,
You
sir.
will wait up, Catherine.
Ignoring her needs, he insisted that she stay awake until her husband returned to their room. Due to mistrust, he even assigned a maid to keep an eye on her. If Catherine dozed off, the maid would immediately wake her up. Bored, Catherine lay on the bed rail, waiting and waiting until the moon was about to set. When her husband finally came back, Catherine still couldn't go to sleep. She had to follow his instructions, stand in the corner, undress, and satisfy his desires before being allowed to sleep. Despite being bought, she was a living person. Catherine had always longed for love, yearning for her husband's comfort and respect. However, it was all an illusion. One morning, Catherine was informed by her father-in-law that her husband had to go to the mine to handle work and that he himself would also be going into town for a few days. The master of the house was now left to Catherine alone. Like a caged bird that had been released, she immediately became unrestrained. She no longer sat on the living room sofa like a doll every day. Instead, she put on loose clothes, ran and jumped out of the house, which felt like a prison, and went for a walk outside, freely breathing the fresh air of the countryside, and was able to sleep in every day. These days were extremely pleasant. One day, she was woken up by the noise outside the window. Driven by curiosity, she followed the sound to the stable and found a group of stable hands laughing and cheering. Her maid was stripped naked and hung up.
We're waiting a pig. Mom, as you see.
Take her down. I said take her down. Face the wall. And stop smiling.
Catherine scolded loudly, but the familiar dialogue made her hair stand on end. It turned out that in the process of being influenced, Catherine had gradually become like her husband. After the maid was rescued, she fled in the chaos. At that moment, an increasingly strong wave of hormones came towards Catherine. It was the new coachman. He stared at Catherine in a rebellious manner, slowly approached her, and lifted her up by the waist. Although Catherine was startled by his rudeness, her heart couldn't help but beat wildly. The freedom she had enjoyed during this period had nurtured the seeds of demons in her heart. So, on an afternoon when a storm was about to come, she deliberately went out and ran into the new coachman, Sebastian, sending him signals. That night, the bold man actually came to her room. As soon as they met, he began to touch the young and beautiful mistress. The primal desire was ignited, and Catherine took the lead, entwining with the coachman in the room. The next morning, the maid came into the room as usual to wake Catherine up, only to find her nightgown on the floor and Catherine lying naked in bed, fast asleep. The maid understood something and left Catherine's room in a panic. Having tasted the pleasure, Catherine began to secretly meet with the coachman in the room more frequently. One day, the maid finally saw through the door crack that the man having an affair with Catherine was the coachman, Sebastian, who had humiliated her in the stable. She was greatly shocked. As the intimate encounters continued day after day, Catherine's boldness grew. They left evidence of their love in the stable and on the meadow. so carried away that she even forgot to go to church for worship until the pastor came to the door and advised Catherine to be proper.
It is not good to be without company for too long, I think. Perhaps a little more time spent indoors, Mrs. Nestor. Perhaps a little more solitude and reflection will do.
Thank you.
Not long after the pastor left, Catherine's father-in-law came back from London. She had to put on a corset again, sit on the sofa, and continue to pretend to be a well-behaved decoration. But her unrestrained behavior during this period had already reached her father-in-law's ears. Without saying a word, he took his cane to the stable, gave the so-called lover a severe beating, and locked him up. After knowing what her father-in-law had done, Catherine immediately confronted him and demanded that he release her lover. However, this reckless behavior once again enraged the already furious father-in-law, and Catherine was slapped hard. The scolding and the slap completely unleashed the demon inside Catherine. She wanted to eliminate everyone who stood in the way of her love. At lunchtime the next day, Catherine found the perfect opportunity to strike. Seeing his cheating daughter-in-law, the man sprang up in rage, then took the dinner plate into the room, refusing to even glance at her. Catherine calmly brought over a chair and wedged it under the doorknob. She then cheerfully invited the maid to sit down and share the sumptuous lunch with her. The maid was extremely surprised and sat on the edge of the chair, not daring to make a sound. Soon, a terrible scream came from the room, causing the maid to stumble and prepare to go in and rescue him.
No, sit down.
At Catherine's command, the maid sat back down and listened uneasily as the screams in the room gradually died down. It was only then that Catherine allowed her to go and call the doctor to treat her father-in-law. However, it was already too late. The man had passed away from the effects of the poisonous mushrooms. As soon as she got rid of her father-in-law, Catherine rushed to the stable where the coachman was being held. She passionately kissed her lover and then boldly brought him home, dressing him in a cotton shirt that only the master of the house was allowed to wear. The kind maid, however, was so frightened that she was never able to speak again. That night, as they were sleeping naked in bed, Catherine was awakened by a noise. She lifted the curtain and saw that her husband had returned. The guilty woman immediately woke her sleeping lover, stuffed him into a closet, and then sat primly on the edge of the bed, waiting for her husband to come in. Despite her excellent acting skills, her husband still sensed something was off. Soon, he spotted a belt lying on the floor and picked it up. Catherine panicked when she saw this.
I found it in the fields.
And decided to keep it?
Hold my skirts up.
Are your skirts in danger of falling down?
Her clumsy lie couldn't deceive her astute husband. He ridiculed his unfaithful wife. Faced with the humiliation, Catherine couldn't bear it any longer. She pulled her lover out from behind the door and, right in front of her powerless husband, began an X-rated love scene. No man could endure his wife's betrayal and provocation. He lunged forward and slapped his bought wife hard. The three of them quickly got into a fight. Catherine and her lover were no match for her husband in strength. Seeing her lover about to get beaten, Catherine went mad. She grabbed a metal rod from the corner and smashed it down on her husband's head. Her husband fell to the ground, motionless. The room was filled with the smell of blood. Catherine's heart was pounding like a drum, but a smile of relief appeared on her face. In order to prevent the body from being discovered, the two of them divided the work. The lover was responsible for disposing of the body and erasing all evidence, while Catherine took care of her husband's horse. After her father-in-law and husband were dead, Catherine became the de facto mistress of the manor and became even more unrestrained. The coachman, who had been in the shadows, now walked into the house as if he owned it, comfortably accepting the servant's care and acting like the master, living a very comfortable life. Unfortunately, this good time didn't last long. After learning about Alexander's disappearance, a woman came to the door with his illegitimate son. According to Alexander's commission, if he met with misfortune, everything in the manor would belong to his illegitimate son, Teddy. Catherine was stunned. It turned out that after all her efforts, she had nothing. The child didn't understand the filth among adults. He looked at Catherine curiously and whispered to his guardian, "She is the most beautiful person I have ever seen." Hearing the child's words, Catherine's eyes softened. This was the first kindness she had received since coming to this cold manor. Teddy liked her very much and followed her around like a little tail. The two of them sat on the grass, watching the mountains, the water, and the birds together, getting along very harmoniously and beautifully. However, this scene was particularly glaring to her lover, Sebastian. Because of Teddy's arrival, he was instantly reduced to his former state, having to wear tattered clothes and sleep in the dirty and smelly stable every day. So, he had terrible thoughts about the child who had disrupted his happy life. Meanwhile, Catherine found out that she was pregnant. She looked at her protruding belly in the mirror, extremely excited, and ran to the stable to share the good news.
Get off me.
I need to talk to you. I need to tell you
Back to
something.
your house and your little master, Catherine.
I can't.
If I come inside, then we're found out.
Catherine didn't understand why her lover had changed like this. She tried to get close to him time and time again, only to be pushed away each time. This made her feel desperate, and she often sat on the windowsill, feeling melancholic. Until one day, she saw Sebastian again, but this time he was flirting with a maid in the manor. Seeing their intimate interaction, Catherine felt betrayed and angrily ran after him to demand an explanation. Teddy thought she was going out to play and wanted to go along, but he was pushed away mercilessly and left crying. Catherine was so busy chasing Sebastian that she didn't pay attention to which direction Teddy had run off in. After a while, everyone was horrified to discover that the young master of the manor, Teddy, had disappeared. Almost all the servants were mobilized, but Teddy was still nowhere to be found. Finally, it was Sebastian who found the almost frozen child by a fast-flowing river and brought him back to the manor.
Teddy.
He was up at the waterfall. He's freezing. Get some blankets.
Who are you? How dare you walk into this house and give orders?
I saved him.
Get out!
The unprovoked malice from the other party once again activated the demon inside Sebastian, and he decided to retaliate. So, he began to use Catherine's love for him to instigate her to seize power and become the true mistress of the manor. Only in this way could they continue their previous happy life. Catherine hesitated. She was very clear about the other meaning in Sebastian's words. Looking at the boy sleeping on the sofa, her memory uncontrollably drifted back to the scene of their first meeting. Teddy's smile was so innocent and harmless. Catherine felt like she was standing in the middle of a balance, with Sebastian on one side and Teddy on the other. Both sides were parts she couldn't bear to part with, and her heart was filled with contradictions. After thinking for a long time, the temptation to be with Sebastian forever and to have their child together finally took the upper hand. She told herself that this was for herself and the unborn child, and to establish a foothold in the manor. So, they took action. Looking at the gradually cold body on the sofa, Catherine's tears finally couldn't help but flow. This was the first innocent person she had killed with her own hands. Her heart was filled with fear and guilt, but there was no way back. It turned out that desire really could turn a person into a devil. However, in the end, Catherine and Sebastian didn't end up together. She was accused by the man she had loved with all her heart.
She killed that boy. She suffocated me. She's a disease.
Catherine's eyes gradually turned cold. After strangling the last bit of warmth left in her, she pointed the gun at the man who had wronged her. Using the societal prejudice that women are weak and emotional, Catherine successfully turned the unfavorable situation around and sent Sebastian to the gallows. In this story filled with oppression and counter-oppression, Catherine became the only survivor, but power and desire had turned her into a terrifying monster.